Could I get everybody seated, please? Okay, we're going to, excuse me, we're starting the meeting. So I now declare the Audit and Risk and Finance Committee meeting number ARF 26-2 open, and welcome to everybody present. I will come back to our new person on the at the table very soon. But I'm going to start with a quote. It's not the most cheerful quote I've ever read, but even so, thought it was worth mentioning in a risk and finance meeting. So evolution is the floating bridge on turbulent waters. Anytime an organisation misses a change step, it will face extinction. Did seem somewhat appropriate for council at the moment. So we have no apologies, I believe, right? Does anybody have any declarations of interest? No. So there's no reports currently in public excluded, is there? Oh, there is, okay. It should be considered an open, so which is?
So you're happy to leave them in public excluded?
Yes, just leave them there, yep. Nobody to speak in public forum either, so no presentations. Okay, so you'll notice that we have Ron Scott, our independent, sitting at the table today, and I'd just like this opportunity to welcome you here. And apologies for it's been a little bit messy getting you onboarded, etc., given we've had a few role changes around here. But I'd like you to take a minute, Ron, just to introduce yourself, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, thanks, Madam Chair, and it's great to be here. My background, some of you will know me. I've up until last year, I was a member of the elected member of the Regional Council. So I've got a little bit of knowledge about local governance locally. My background, though, is I'm an economist, the degree in economics and another degree in geography and history. So it's a big amount of understanding data and analysing it is part of my background. What I do these days, I'm also a RMA commissioner. Most of what I do these days is in the roles of governance. I'm on the boards of the Blind Foundation, Workbridge Holdings, Consumer New Zealand, and I'm on the National Council of the AA. That's the cars, not the alcohol. So that's what keeps me busy, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm particularly interested in the risk management side, which I know is something that you're developing here. I was the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee of the DHB for 5 years, in which time, rather proudly, I can say we always kept a budget, and 4 out of 5 of those were surpluses. And we always not only kept a budget, but achieved our targets as well. But one of the big projects we did was to develop a risk management framework. So that's something I'm hoping I can add value to here in particular. So thank you for welcoming me on.
Lovely, thank you, Ron. Okay, so next item, I need a mover and a seconder, and the recommendation being that the minutes of the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee meeting held on 17th of March 26 be confirmed as a true and correct record, and the recommendations therein be adopted, and that the chairperson's report, report electronic signature be inserted into the confirmed minutes. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Margaret, as a mover, and Laura as seconder. Thank you. Okay, Darren. Sorry. Oh, sorry. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. Okay, Darren, your turn. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm filling in for Clint today, who actually, well, I'm not filling in for Clint, but Clint actually resigned. So in April of this year. So we're currently going through the recruitment process for the new health and safety lead, and we're in the final stages of making that appointment. So just you've got me today to cover off the health and safety function. So overall, we've performed very well over the last quarter, with key metrics continuing to trend in a good direction. You can see that obviously over this quarter of this year, the well-being of our people was actually quite a significant focus given to the number of the significant weather events that occurred at the beginning of the year. So our focus was very much on ensuring that we were able to manage the requirements in terms of the response and timely recovery in that spaces, and also while we tried to continue to ensure that BAU continued as smoothly as possible. But I think it's a really credit to the leadership of the organisation and staff through this process who put in a considered effort to manage that balance as well as we could. And so hence we had a big focus on supporting our team members through that quarter. So I'll take the report as read. Some of those key indicators are right in the key insights in the summary there. So most of our metrics, like I mentioned, have been performing quite well. I'll open it up for any questions.
Councillor Joyce.
Just on page 7, I think it is, of the report, which is on, no, number 7, sorry, page 22 of the agenda, asbestos management. I don't know if you can help today, because obviously you're a bit of a ring-in, but I'd like to know a little bit more about that. We have quite a large network, for example, of asbestos water pipes. Asbestos is fine if you leave it alone, but I'm not aware that we're monitoring for deterioration of those water pipes. I did ask a year or two ago and was told no, there wasn't monitoring. So at some stage it would be good to get an update of, particularly with the water pipes, but just generally how we're monitoring for asbestos deterioration, bearing in mind that obviously we haven't put anything asbestos in the ground for decades now, so it's all getting old.
Yep. Okay. I'll take that away. That'll be a question that we have to work with the operations teams with regard to identifying whether we have any measures. Yeah.
Come back to the next meeting, please.
Councillor Sol.
Thank you. Actually, I also just querying really page 22 and also on to page 23. The contractor monitoring. You highlight that basically as an area of concern, well, of maintaining a high level of focus, etc. And I just wonder how well that's going. And after looking at some of the actual results later in the report, how we're going to actually increase, I guess, that monitoring or increase its performance, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. So contractor management is one of the areas that we've identified in terms of that we could increase our maturity in that space. So we've been working quite closely with contract managers and procuring managers in that space to strengthen our contract management, ensuring that health and safety is embedded within those contracts. So we start right at the procurement side of things, and then moving through to what good looks like in terms of actually providing that assurance and that due diligence that our contractors are actually performing the works in the way that they had intended to. So it's one of those areas that we will continue to provide support to our project managers and our contract managers in terms of going, what does good look like in that space for them? Due diligence will be a key factor around that, just getting out to those key sites, doing some audits and reporting on those areas and bringing them through. But contract management is the full life cycle of the engagement of contractors, and it really starts right up at that procurement phase. So good contract management starts there for us, ensuring that we are appointing those who are suitably qualified to be performing the works that they're doing, making sure that they've got all their pre-qualifications in place, and making sure that we've seen very robust plans to perform the works that they were doing. And then following that, it's all about getting out there and ensuring that they're actually doing the works in the way that they had committed to doing them.
Thank you for that. Yes, because it does show quite a, whilst it's only 4 incidents as a percentage, it's quite a noticeable increase as a trend. The other area was the violence and aggression interests me. The report I'm at currently current rating moderate and trend is level. Oh, sorry. So I'll repeat that then, that the violence and aggression, the current level rating is moderate and the trend is just running level as such and effective. I'm interested because a lot of these aggression incidents would have happened, I guess, when we had parking people, and now we've got a car running around, which presumably is reducing that. So is this actually happening to all staff going out in the field, or is it into the offices and so on? Where is this happening? Because that's concerning. I would have thought the parking one was quite a nasty sort of area, and if it's not in there now.
It's across the board for all of our front-facing community service, customer-facing roles. So it's across the business, and it's also internally if we're responding to particularly SRs, making customer calls to potentially disgruntled community members and that sort of stuff. So it can be across the business. The key thing is that we're very, very clear that this is a critical risk to the organisation. It's one of the 4 critical risks. And so with that, we have a high level of engagement with staff on ensuring that the mitigations that we've got in place are fit for purpose, and that we're well aware of the exposure to this risk for our staff. That's the key thing, really. We know that we're unlikely to be able to mitigate aggressive and abusive customers given the business that we're in. So it's just ensuring that our staff that are exposed to that are suitably trained, qualified, and able to manage that. And why we kind of have the kind of contingent risk or the mitigating risk here at moderate is because our staff do an amazing job on this front. And I've been at the front of seeing our staff, and particularly in the customer service areas, responding to aggressive behaviour in the foyer and things like that. And I've been absolutely amazed at the skills that they put into place and the actions that they take across the board. We will never drop the ball on this one. It's a key one. We're only one event away from a significant event in the space. And likewise, our animal control officers at the forefront of quite often aggressive members of the public. So yeah, I can't really say too much more on that. But yeah, we'll always be reporting on this. It's top 4, it's called a critical risk, and the business will always carry risk.
Yeah, and I think the training, the good training or the standard of training here with our customer facing staff is incredible in terms of de-escalating situations as well, and the way they manage people, from what I've observed too, is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Beach. Pardon? Oh, sorry, Ron.
This is the other Councillor Beach. My question is, it follows on from Councillor Soul in a way. It might be a reporting question, but if you look at page 24-25 about the contractor incidents, and there's a big number compared to the number of contractor site inspections. I'm wondering whether there's just a mismatch of categories there. And so a lot of those contractor incidents would have been caught by site inspections and labelled as that. And if so, whether there's another way they're reported so that we can sort of keep an eye on the things that Councillor Soul raised.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation in terms of our reporting, particularly the contractor incidents coming through and the management and the site inspections in that area. I think we will be looking to improve that with the new lens in terms of reporting. Unfortunately, you've got me reporting out of this system for this quarter. It's certainly not my strength. And so I've actually changed a few things in terms of reporting just to ensure that we are reporting factual information at the moment. When you get the health and safety lead who has a lot more skills in health and safety management systems, we'll revert back to some of the original reporting there.
Councillor Murray Benj.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please, when we know that our service staff at the front counter are superb. For those workers who have to go from Waihi Beach to Makatu and are outside and confronting sometimes difficult positions, do we send 2 people instead of 1?
There are a number of procedures in place. I know our animal control officers, they often will buddy up if they know that they are going to be dealing with aggressive customers. However, you know, it really depends on the situation. It depends whether it's kind of planned or unplanned. Yeah, I can't comment on all the operational teams from that perspective, but we will likely always have incidents where you know, a single member of our organisation is confronted with a member of the public.
Can also comment on the dog control people having first-hand experience when they picked up a dog on the road one night with no collar, and they were the most lovely people and fantastic. Obviously they love animals, so I mean, I know that they get people who are aggressive as well, but I think they do an amazing job too. I was really impressed. Councillor Ray.
I'm just looking at page 26 and the total inspections completed. Is there sort of a reason why that number's up in the 200s now, compared to previous years? Is that a good thing? Are we spending more money to monitor? What does that mean, please?
Yeah, so what it means is that we've actually targeted introducing what we call proactive checks, and these are counted in proactive inspections. So what we've done is we've introduced things like vehicle inspections before you get into a vehicle. These are what we call these are not lag indicators. These indicate, you know, these are preventative actions to prevent incidents occurring. So these are the types of things that we've introduced, and they've been going really, really well. It's really quite pleasing that it's just natural for our team members before they jump into a pool vehicle is to actually inspect the vehicle, submit a check within the system. And so that's fantastic. You know, we can identify things where we might have, you know, a tire that's gone down, or that we've got a warrant that expired or something like that. So we're not going to use those vehicles.
Thank you, Darren. Just page 22, just regarding Pulse ERM. Just the sentence, the toolkit can and should be used throughout council at every level, whether strategic, operational, program or project. Would you mind just expanding on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's no problem at all, and I'll let Simon address this through his work program as well, as he's leading this implementation. So one of the key things that we're looking to do is have a single view or a collective view of organisational risk. What we have been doing previously is we've had a separate risk management framework, and we've got strategic risks covered within that. Then we have the health and safety framework, where we have critical risks and operational risks. What we're looking to do is bring a holistic view of risk across the organisation together, and have some consistency around how we manage that risk. And the Pulse is just a tool. Look, it's a software tool, but we will capture all the risks associated with the organisation, and we'll have a standardised way of reporting and managing those risks moving forward. So that's what the Pulse the Pulse software will bring us, and we've kind of talked about that previously as well, because we've got a couple of key modules from that. Well, we have our project management module, which is about to go live, and so all of our projects will be in that tool. And we have the risk module associated with that as well. So we've got the risks associated and overseeing all of the projects which we're reporting in there. And the final module which we'll be implementing will be our corporate planning performance tool. And that will be a very useful for preparing reports for these committees. So we'll have a really integrated piece of software spanning across all of our key projects. So performance and monitoring will be reporting out of there. Risk will be reporting out of the risk module for this committee, and also our corporate performance and planning side of things, which will be all of our key performance indicators for the organisation. And based on that, we'll be able to have a really good view of how the organisation is performing.
Thank you, Darren. Do we hear, Councillor Murray-Benj.
Page 25, you may have commented already, but take 5 dash transport JSEA. What does that mean?
You've caught me out, Margaret.
Sorry?
You've caught me out. This is where it'd be great to call on Clint, but the statistics within our Vault system is that we've got a number of JSA transport inspections taking place. So these are the things that our transport team, particularly the people out there inspecting our roads and those sorts of things, make sure that they're fit for purpose. They're out there inspecting and logging those, and that's that area there. So yeah, I can't exactly give you the definition of the acronym though.
Councillor Sol.
Last one from me, I guess. Basically on page, well, it's the next quarter focus, page 27. And it's great. So you've got somebody coming in to specialise in that field. And I do appreciate you being on the spot today and being over it, which is pretty good. In all fairness, I guess we would expect it, but in some ways that's why you have people doing that job. So that's great. But I'm interested in the last 2 lines, and one of them is in here: enhance the use of current systems to increase proactive inspections. And then there's a comment about the health and safety in workplace framework and so on being changed. Just worries me a little bit that implies a lot of it is still desktop. And how much is that the case, and how much is it that not only is it desktop, but it's, in other words, making sure our contracts are right and that our contractors meet the requirements? How much of it is actually going out and making sure they comply? Is that where we're going to have a bit more, whilst I'm sure it's quite a lot more expensive, the fact is what we deliver has got to, that's out there, you know.
And so it's always just looking at our overall maturity of the full health and safety system. And so we're at a stage where I don't personally have any concerns about how we are managing health and safety within the organisation. We are at a mid to kind of upper quartile in terms of the robustness around our health and safety system. But what we're always doing is we're always looking to improve. We've always got a critical eye on how we can increase our maturity in those areas that we know we're not performing as well as other areas. That's last year we brought up pillar consulting kind of audit and health and safety within the infrastructure area. The report largely confirmed what we knew about our performance, but it also highlighted some of the areas that we could be doing a little bit better and saying, hey, look, if you're going to be investing your energy, which is kind of highlighting what can we do next to make the biggest difference, that's how we're always approaching our health and safety maturity. So what we do know is about typically, we used to just report on lag indicators. So this is all the stuff that's already happened. We're not going to influence any change or impact on behaviours when we're just looking at the past. So what we do know is that we've had a concerted effort in focusing on proactive checks. So the things that are likely to prevent significant injuries or events from happening. So that's a key focus, and that's why we continue to push in that space. We've got a reasonable tool, which is a DAMP's Vault system, and it has apps and things like that, which we're continuing to develop. So it's easy for our team members to get out and about in the field and do checks through the apps and things like that. So that's what we continue to do in that space. The health and safety framework, like a number of frameworks within the council, just really needs a good review to remove the clutter. This is the typical things when we talk about this sort of stuff. We have policies, we have a number of policies, and our landscape's getting a little bit cluttered and confusing. What we could do is that we could streamline that. And the health and safety framework has designed the review in that space as to streamline the framework, make it as easy and clear as possible for our people to engage and do the right things in that space. It's a little bit cluttered at the moment.
Dil, did you want to say something?
Through the chair. So just wanted to just follow up from what Jeremy was saying about the whole system. So what we've got on page 27 of the report is our overall system performance. So and you'll see that we've got where we think we are when we consider everything that Darren's talked to at the moment about how that all collectively comes together. So that's why we're trying to say overall, with all the things that we do, whether it's proactive or reactive, and the systems and processes and tools, as a system, this is where we think we are at the moment. And to Darren's point, we will always, be moving forward and trying to do better in this area, particularly in the case of, looking after the wellbeing of our staff and health of our staff. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that to your attention so you can see when we're talking about the system, it's everything that Darren's talked to.
Councillor Alvin?
Just thinking ahead, and thank you for your report. I'm interested in how far we're looking at developing what this framework might look like when waters are set up. I don't want to have to be sitting here with twice as many people in two organisations doing half the work. And so I expect that piece of work is going to include what impact waters is going to have and how we can streamline costs in this area, because I think that's a bit of work that we need to do. The possibility of not having every little puddle having its own health and safety sort of program, but having a big pond with a combined approach is really what I'm looking at, because that's what the legislation's and the thrust is designed to do. So any work being done on that so far?
It's early days to see how the waters organisation has stood up and what that means. But clearly, both councils who are members of that water organisation will be contributing significantly to the establishment of the health and safety system within the waters organisation, and that's to be expected. Likewise, people policies and things like that. All I can say is that we are highly collaborative in that space. We work with all councils in the region to share information and collaborate on things. I'd like to see high collaboration, and we're very open to that and continuing to collaborate from that perspective.
Sorry, just through the chair, just wanted to follow up on Darren's comment. The overall aim was to be efficient with the new organisation, and so we've identified all the aspects of what the water organisation will require moving forward, and even deeper than just health and safety. So there will be some shared services back with council where it makes sense.
Lasol?
Yes, Madam Chair. I was prepared to move that we receive the report.
Yeah, sure. You didn't have any questions about wellbeing bingo? No? Thought that was quite funny. Seconder? Or question? Question. Sorry, we'll hold that thought. Councillor Joyce?
So just following up on Graham's point and what you just mentioned, I know it's not part of this process, but when will the question of shared services come back to the governance group? Or will it come through the joint committee, I presume, right?
Through the chair. So in the first instance, we'll be going back through the joint committee. And we've got our first joint committee meeting on the 19th of June as an intro, and then starting to build up that program. So there's a program of work that will be identified, and then any decisions or recommendations will come back to council.
Councillor Murray Bench?
Dopey question, but sir, when health and safety of our workers on district roads, do we have an overkill like they have on state highways?
I probably couldn't comment on that. Sorry, I don't have that information at hand.
What I'm really saying is that for our district road workers, when contracted out, do we have a health and safety requirement that they've got to abide by that is any more common sense than what we see on our state highways by NZTA?
Matt, did you want to comment?
Good morning, Deputy Mayor, through the chair. We will have very specific health and safety guidelines on how our contractors must operate. Whether people's opinion of whether it's overkill or not is probably not relevant. There's specific guidelines they must meet to meet the Act, and also that of the contractor, and that's where the health and safety staff member will be out making sure that they are meeting those requirements, not setting those requirements.
Yeah, and to follow on from that, all of our major contracting partners are suitably qualified. And like we talk about our health and safety system here and the things that we have in place, our major contracting partners have very robust health and safety systems in place to ensure that their staff are not exposed to unnecessary risk. And as you know, in that contracting environment, there are some significant real risks that they are exposed to every day.
Okay, if there's no more questions, the recommendation we have a mover for is that the People and Capability Managers report dated 26th of May 26, titled Health, Safety and Wellbeing Report be received. So we have a mover, and a seconder would be Councillor Murray Benj. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So we have Alison Curtis next, regarding the IANZ. I'm not sure how we say that, accreditation. IANZ, we'll call it IANZ. Okay, lovely. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. So I don't have Nigel here with me today. So Nigel Mogford is Council's Building Services Manager who wrote this report. So I will try my best to respond to any questions from the committee in relation to the technical matters that are in this. But as way of background, Council is required as a building consenting authority to be accredited by IANZ on a 2-yearly basis. So this is a significant piece of work that the team has to prepare for. It is a 4-day assessment by IANZ, where they basically go through all of Council's systems, the documentation, and they are looking to ensure that the work that we undertake as a building consenting authority is fit for purpose and meets the statutory requirements. So we are at this point in time, we have 3 non-compliance areas that are still yet to be closed out with IANZ, and all other matters have been submitted to IANZ. So we're in a very positive space to receive our full accreditation within probably the next month. Probably the key thing for us is we are still classified as what's considered a low risk council, and that is we have no serious non-compliances in terms of our operation as a building consenting authority. So I'll open for any questions and try my best to wear Nigel's hat in this space.
Yes, I know when you look at the report, you think, oh gosh, there's a lot of things on there, but they're all minor things, obviously, as well. But Mayor Denny, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. So I was looking at the assessment report and the areas of non-compliance, and you've got 12 general non-compliance, 22 recommendations and 5 advisory notes. And as the chairs said, that sounds like a lot, and when you read them, it's really quite technical. And but I'm just wondering, do you know how that compares to other councils? Is that sort of typical of sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, or is it more than some or less than some? What's your experience?
I would suggest, because we're still considered a low risk council, that it is a fair assessment around, there always are going to be matters where they will provide areas for feedback and areas for improvement. There are no, if you've read through the areas where they've provided general non-compliance, they are what I would consider minor matters for all but a couple. And those matters that were considered, in my opinion, probably required a little bit more work was where there was further training required around things like compliance schedules. So they are what I would consider would be reasonable for any building consenting authority to receive in terms of feedback around areas for improvement.
Thank you, Alison. Just perhaps a follow-up. Were there any in there that cause you either concern or might be difficult to fix?
So probably the most difficult one that we've had is, and it's kind of a two-stage process. So what we have to be able to do is demonstrate that our staff are trained, and this in particular example was around code compliance certificates. But not only we have to demonstrate that they're trained, but that they actually can demonstrate the understanding and how they're applying those. So there's a bit of a time lag in terms of undertaking the formal training and then being able to make an assessment around how those officers have actually retained that information and how they're applying it in the field. So that's probably the only one of those areas of non-compliance where there's been a little bit more work required to actually close that out, and which is why it's one of the last ones for us to close out.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Alvin.
Alison, can you tell me how much it costs to get this report done, and do you consider we get value for money out of it, or is it just an organisation looking to find itself a job to do?
That's a good question. We do not have any choice in the matter. It is a statutory responsibility. The key thing I think is probably from context is the reason that this is applied to all building consenting authorities is to make sure that we've got a rigorous system in place for assessing buildings, ensuring that we've got, quality of and safety of buildings and particular dwellings provided to the public, bearing in mind that these settings were put in place following a regime where there was private BCAs, and we had a government which was responding to leaky homes. So from that context, it is probably fair and reasonable from a risk perspective, from a national, and in terms of value for money, IANZ does provide a really robust assessment around the work that councils do. And as I say, it's a 4-day deep dive into all of our systems and processes. I couldn't tell you what the cost is off the top of my head, but I'm going to certainly come back to you.
I'd be interested in knowing. I mean, I think that in the market we're in at the moment, I mean, all of these things need to have the bonnet lift in a good shake. And I understand the reasons why it might have been that in the past, leaky building, but to produce a really lengthy report that says actually you did a pretty good job, I wonder whether its regularity, its cost, and all those just need to be really tightly examined to see we're just not being taken by yet another provider.
Matt, did you want to say something?
Yes, so Councillor Evan, just picking up on the value for money element, we'll come back with the cost on that. One of the things, the value in it, it's much like having our financials audited. It's an independent that comes and look at it, and they do really, really pull it apart. So the confidence you have as elected members, and also the community and the people submitting their building consents, that we are meeting those requirements. Are there any other providers, or are they the only provider?
They're the only provider.
I'm conscious in all forms of government that you set up a committee to design a building to house the people that you're designing the building for. There's this whole self-fulfilling process. And I think, and just as a general thing in this audit and risk environment, I'm not saying we don't need to do it. I just think we need to be really rigorous about what value we're getting at it. And so we trim down the cost to our ratepayer. Because we do everything, we better get that peer reviewed, or we get that peer reviewed. And, I was just looking at some of our legal costs and thinking, oh my God, that's just a general concern.
Ron?
Yes, I've got 2 questions. One may be above your pay grade, I don't know. But the first one is, so the recommendations or the non-compliances were due to be closed out by the first week of June, the 8th of June, I think it was. There's 3 remaining. You've said that one of them is going to be long-term because it relies on people being trained and then proving that they've learned what they were trained in. Are we on track allowing for that to close off the last 3?
So when I spoke with our building services manager before I came into this meeting, he said that we anticipated that all be closed off by the end of next week, and we should have our IANZ re-accreditation within the next 2 weeks.
Fantastic. The second question is, a lot of the recommendations were to do with having the right information in the right place. And I don't know if this is something you can answer or not, but I'm just wondering whether that is also true of the whole organisation. So are there other parts of the organisation where that might also be something worth reflecting on?
So I think one of the key issues is that we use a system called ProMap for our quality management system. So it is a difficult system to navigate its way around. And one of the issues we have is when we have externals come in who are not familiar with that, including the likes of IANS, they do find it quite difficult to kind of figure out how you've structured that process. So without kind of getting too deep into the detail, we have got multiple layers that sit within that ProMap system. So there's a high level schedule or structure, and then there are levels or layers down below that. So information might be held in one layer that might relate to another question that they've raised. So can be quite difficult particularly for externals to navigate. It's generally only used for our quality management systems where we've got external verification. So it is a living document as opposed to what might be the more familiar paper quality management system, but that's very difficult to keep updated for, particularly for a large number of staff.
So are you saying that if a staff member needs a piece of information for whatever purpose, they will always be able to get it quite efficiently?
They're all trained in terms of navigating that system to find those documents. Whether or not they can find it on the day is another story. Yeah.
That's all.
Okay. Basically, just following on from that, because it was one area. So at present, as we are operating, so we're going to have people up to speed as to the requirements set by IAMS when they get the information at the end of the month. Does that mean that do we have people that actually, this is a systems thing, so I understand it's systems, but are the people that we have that are issuing CCCs at present trained to that level at present to meet the requirement, or are we behind on that? Is that something that is still sitting there that we've got to step up to achieve? Do you understand what I mean?
I'm afraid I'm not following your question.
In other
Is
words,
this relating to the report? If so, please just direct me to the page and I will see if I can respond.
Okay, basically, I moved back out. It's just basically that we have people that are issuing CCCs at present that they can't be challenged if the audit said that we didn't come up to standard. I guess that's really the question.
So am I taking it that there is, so I'm not familiar with this report. There is a general non-compliance around code compliance certificates. Is that what?
It's the ability of, have we got people that actually have the authority? Do we have people of the authority to actually issue CCCs at present? I guess that's probably the simplest way of putting it.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Right, if we have no more questions, I'll ask for a mover. Oh, sorry, Councillor Daly.
Alison, on page 41, there's and apologies for not thoroughly reading this as well as I should have, but there's a comment about, I'll just find it. The council appears to be cancelling granted consents where the owner chose to not proceed with issue of the consent. And I haven't read the recommendation, sorry, so I'm not sure, and you may not have either, but is this a common practice? Because it would seem that a resource consent or a building consent for a project would hold some value, and cancelling it at the whim of the BCA probably potentially affects the value of a property that it's been granted for.
So if I look at the bottom of page 41, there's bullet point 2, which was findings results. And it says the BCA appeared to be cancelling granted consents where the owner chose not to proceed with the issue of the consent. So from my taking of that, there's probably two things. There's one that the first bullet point says that it was the referral of what's detailed in our system says it's cancelling of building consents, where it should be referring to withdrawn.
I mean, do you think, I mean, obviously an owner, if they've gone through a process to obtain a building consent, there's been some value and time and process involved in that. But I mean, is it purely at the request of the owner? I mean, this is in terms of like building consents that have been granted that lie on the table, so to speak. Is that a common practice?
I couldn't answer that question. Sorry, I would need one of the team here, but council would only cancel consents at the request of the owner, is my understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Perhaps we could just get that clarified, Alison. That would be great. Thank you. Okay, so if we've got no more questions, can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept the report. The report be received for the Building Services Manager report regarding consenting authority. So we have a mover, Councillor Ray, and Councillor Beach as seconder. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you and good morning. So today we have the, the 9-month financial report presenting. So that is to the period 31 March 2026. So this report includes some group forecasting, so targeting what the numbers will be like at the end of June. These are developed in association with the budget owners and looking at our program control group forecasting. So that's a regular forecasting process, but for this March, we look a bit deeper and start targeting what those end positions 30 June will be like. So the key metrics for our 31 March position, our total revenue is higher than what was budgeted for the year-to-date position by 4.7 million. Our total expenditure was lower by 7.6 million. And our capital expenditure program is lower by 9.9 million. In the capital expenditure space, so on page 3, there's a bit of a speedo graph sitting there. So that's showing that our financial forecast for the end of the year is going to be below budget at this stage at 141 million. So being nearly 10 million under that. Some of those differences back to budget are from our structure plan projects, where we've had forecasted net savings of approximately 10 million. So that program is Crown funded, and those savings, our GM of Infrastructure, Brad, continues to work with the Crown to see whether some of those non-cash savings are transferable to other projects. Also in that space, and going the other way, we are also over budget in our wastewater activity. And that's primarily due to the Gordon Street or the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant. So that's progressing ahead of time. And it's forecast to be 6.6 million over budget, but still on the overall spend of the project. It's just an earlier timing for that instance.
Councillor Joyce, did you have a question?
Thanks for this, Jonathan. Just looking at the overall picture, I mean, there's so many obviously different pots of money and different forms of income. And so while we're looking at quite a big surplus at the end of the year, it's not actually a cash surplus of that, obviously. So any idea what's the best way to measure our cash surplus? Is it general rates reserve, or what actually will be our cash surplus forecast for the end of the year? Yes, it's not tied to projects and subsidies and work that's committed.
Yeah, so you're right. The best way to look at it is that general rates reserve and what that position is going to land like at the end of the year.
Mhm.
So, and you're correct. It certainly won't be that full surplus that we've got sitting there year to date.
So any
So
idea
we-
what the general rate reserve will be at the end of the year?
I wouldn't want to put a number on it, but we do an analysis. So we look through every cost centre and look at those that are general rates funded. We have done that exercise and it's showing that we will be adding to that general rate reserve. Not a significant amount, but at this stage, it's looking like it will be positive into the general rate reserve.
Right. We budgeted, I think, for the general rate reserve to be rebuilt up a little bit because we've obviously depleted it in recent years with the building downturn. So from memory, we budgeted to increase the general rate reserve a little bit this year, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. So we've been
So
targeting
this is on top of that.
over the next 3 years to
Yeah.
to start building that back up.
And this is on top of that planned increase, is it?
Yes, because we're showing more of a surplus than what was anticipated in the budget.
And I guess the
Adele?
other thing is that
Yeah, Dale's just gonna.
oh, sorry, I was just saying, we've also got some big bills for storm damage coming up, so let's not get too heavy.
You just through the chair, so, yeah, we are anticipating, because of the current environment and we're doing better in that regulatory area, which is general rates funded, that we will, are anticipating a surplus, as Jonathan's pointed out. There are some, the year-end things with the stormwater that we're still calculating at the moment, but we also put forward a paper last year to council about a 4-year program of work to make sure that we're rebuilding the general rate reserve to cope with any unplanned events in the future as well. So we're on track to deliver that. And as you pointed out, there's certain things like the depreciation, which is non-cash funded. And so when you're looking at the overall position, we do keep a track on our general rates reserve as well as our total surplus position.
Any idea when we might get a meaningful forecast for the general rates reserve rather than waiting until the draft accounts some months after the end of the financial year?
Through the chair, so what's happened to date is that a lot of our funding journals are actually done at year end, and we're looking at the overall, movement of funds, etc. With our move to the new ERP system, we're looking to improve some of that reporting.
Part of the complication, just to add to Dale's comment, is the range of rates that we've got. And we have to obviously fund every cost centre for each of those rate types. So there's a lot of buckets, which is why we've traditionally done it in the year end.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other question that I'll relinquish the floor. So we talked a bit previously about getting an idea how projects are looking overall. So there's a reference in here, for example, the Waihi Beach Library being $500,000 under budget year to date on page 78 down the bottom. But we still don't get a clear idea because we're still looking at these period by period. What is the overall project? It would be good to get a note, not just what's happening this year, but an extra clause on the end that says this means the overall project is done, because we might have been above budget previous year. So we're still just getting these slices of information that don't really tell us whether the overall project is good or bad compared to budget.
Yeah, so we've been having recent discussions with Brad and his infrastructure team on how we can align the projects and monitoring reporting through to the financials. And there's a scorecard report, and also through the use of our new Pulse system, we'll be able to sort of remove some of the accounting periods out of those reports and provide that information that you need as a whole. Yeah.
Adele, did you want to say something? No. Mayor Denia, you had a question?
My question's been answered, thanks.
Carry on, Jonathan. Councillor Alvin.
A note in a lot of cases, if, for example, we're going to be under budget expected for capital projects for the end of the year, and I look through it, to what extent are those just delayed projects, and to what extent are we making savings in projects? If it comes in under budget, that's great. If we've completed a project and it's come in under budget, if it's just a timing issue, then I'm not so excited about that. So an assessment of those that are under it and those that are over, and it's very confusing when you look through this list. Most of them are actually deferrals one way or the other, and there's no assessment in there. I see one comment that we're over in the Waihi Beach one, I think it was. So are those delays simply timing issues, or have we had any savings there? Have you got a view on whether we've made any savings on budget?
So the biggest one with the savings is in that structure plan space, where there's a $10 million saving. You're correct, there are unders and overs, and our best reflection of that is at year end when we look at every project and every cost centre And at that point, establish what carry forwards that we need to move into the next financial year. So at that point, it confirms, and we go through it line by line. It confirms what projects are behind time and still needing to be spent, but also through the projects and monitoring the work that each individual project manager is doing. They'd be able to dive into each project and explain those. We just don't break that detail to this report.
I mean, I do expect we'd be behind on some of that capital works, given some of the events we've had to deal with recently. That's no surprise, but just making sure we get a measure on the genuine issues about the undersnows. Thanks for that.
Through the chair. So what Jonathan has put the dial graph on page 77 is showing that we'll be about $10 million under our budget for the full year. In terms of managing to budget, that is reported through projects and monitoring, and where we are, officers do not have any delegation to exceed that budget without coming back to council. So where we've had variances and contract prices have come in higher than we anticipated when we'd gone to we normally put the QS estimates into our budget. If there is a difference in that, particularly on large projects, and we've got some unknowns in there, we would come back to council for approval. So that's the normal process for us. Acknowledging what Jonathan said earlier, though, that we will look to do that full project reporting, which I think will give you the full picture that you're looking for.
Just following on, I'm sorry, because it seems to me it's quite important now, is if we're genuinely under on a delivery, then that is some reserves we've got in some of the extra costs we've got going forward. And so that's the difference between timing and genuine savings. And that's just to look forward and get a view of that.
Yeah, so just commenting on that. So if it's a loan project and we haven't spent the budget, we won't draw down the full loan that's required. So, we won't be putting that through. If there is a rates charge, for example, and it is a surplus we would have charged in that year, it will go back into the reserve, and then council has the ability to provide that funding for other purposes. But because of the nature of and the number of rates that we've got, everything is effectively ring fenced into separate buckets.
Thank you. Just following on from what Jonathan's saying and what Adele's saying, it is a work in progress, linking the financials to the P&M progress side of stuff. And there is a lot of work going on in the background. Probably the key thing is that Pulse implementation and the new ERP. But to be really clear, we're probably not going to see the real benefits of this until probably at least the first or possibly the second quarter of the next financial year. So the team are working hard to try and build those linkages, and absolutely agree with Councillor Elvin. The numbers only tell one part of the story, and if you're hearing it 2 months apart, it does get lost in translation. So it is something we're aware of, and we're working hard to sort it.
And again, Jonathan, Councillor Daly, you had a question?
Jonathan, just in terms of the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant, I assume that, that's a fixed price contract with McConnell Dowell, and I assume that there's penalties if they don't meet the production deadline or the construction deadline. But conversely, are there bonuses if they finish the project ahead of time?
Thanks, Councillor Daly. As far as I'm aware, no, there are no bonuses them for achieving it ahead of time. That's reasonably unusual. The reason that we're saying it's going to be overspent this year is actually because of the timing of the cash flows from when they started. The overall project is still due to cost exactly what the contract was signed for.
Carry on, Jonathan.
Can I ask a follow-up? Matt, you said it's unusual for that to be the case, to pay bonuses, but do you think there would be benefit in offering some sort of incentive for contractors to complete early? Like we've had these constant delays with some of our roading contracts, and it seems that they're just sort of playing with us almost in terms of disruption in the community from these roadworks that seem to go on forever. Yet if there was some incentive to reward them to actually complete the job on time or ahead of time, could have benefits for us in terms of our reputational issues.
It's an interesting idea. So having spent 8 years on the other side of the fence and done close to $2 billion of work, I've never seen a contract with an incentive in it. The actual incentive in reality is intangible. If they do a really, really good job, the likelihood is they'll stand a good chance of getting the next one. What you need to be really careful of, if you start building in those incentives, it can lead to other behaviours, shortcuts, poor workmanship, not doing everything they say they're going to do. So if it's something that council wanted to look at, you'd have to be very, very clear around what the KPIs are and make sure they were delivered on. And I'm sure if you talk to Brad or Callum, they can probably highlight some of the risks of that in relation to what happened with the ONMC contract. And often when we have delays, they're genuine reasons for delays, not the fact that the contractor's not doing a good job or is lazy. Again, in my experience, the faster you get the job done, the more money you make as a contractor. Dragging it out doesn't make you more money.
Councillor Sol.
Yeah, just to comment, Madam Chair, that's basically it. It lies, most of those things lie with the actual contractor, and if they can perform the job to the specs that we require, and if they can do it under budget and they have and return the funds, that's where they give their people budget bonuses, not ours.
Just circling back to the revenue comments in there. So that's page 79, page 4 of the finance report. So the subsidies and grants year to date are 4.6 million above budget. That's primarily due to transportation subsidies. We had a carry forward for the Mokoro roundabout last year's due to an underspend last year. So bringing that expenditure into this year also brings the subsidies able to be claimed into this year. When we're referring back to the general rate reserve or the more cash-focused revenue, our rating penalties are 401,000 above budget year to date and forecast to be 851 by year end. So we've just gone through our final penalty run, if you like, for the year recently, and that was for penalties from the previous rating year, which still haven't been paid. So that was an additional 10% that had been run on that. Also, our general rates are 306,000 above budget, forecast to be nearly 400,000 by year end. And again, that's based on growth.
Councillor Joyce, you have a question?
A couple of things. On Quayside, that Rangiuru, I take it. Yeah. So how are we looking with Rangiuru financially? Because, we're obviously spending quite a lot of money, particularly on the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant, is partly for Rangiuru. We aren't seeing a lot of sales at Rangiuru after the initial burst. So how are we tracking financially with that project and our exposure to that project?
Ed, you wanted to say something?
So Councillor Joyce, at this stage, Quayside are selling land. I think they've sold circa just over 10 hectares. That in discussions with them, they are looking to try and sell 8 to 10 hectares a year as their target, which will then drive the workload requirement. So we will make sure that the infrastructure they need from us matches the timing of the development, which we will collect through financial contributions from those developers and properties that come on. In relation to the Te Puke wastewater treatment plant, the capacity is going to be built there for Rangiuru, but that's over a much longer horizon than 2 or 3 years' time.
I guess my question is related to when we expect to see the FinCos to meet these costs. Are we forecasting, and are we able to forecast that? Because it's a big chunk, right? It's a big project. So our FinCo income has been volatile, to say the best. So are we able to forecast that for Rangiuru with any degree of usefulness, bearing in mind that Quayside have great plans, but that 10 hectares has been sold for a while.
So two sides to that. One is that Quayside are in the hole for circa $100 million on this. They have put the investment up front, and we will collect some of their financial contributions for them. So we don't have any exposure in that sense. It's collect and pass through. In terms of the work that we have to do, again, to be really honest, no, we can't reliably estimate when those funds will come through versus the development work that happens. That the team go out and do the growth projections. They go and talk to the development community, talk to Quayside to try and come up with an estimate of when that's going to happen, but that's the very best they can do.
The other one was the water charges. It talks about being $520.5 million above budget year end, but that's just a smaller deficit, right? It's not actually, we're not making money out of water, we're just losing less, aren't we?
Yeah, you're correct. That's more revenue. And
we're forecasting a deficit, so I presume that will just offset
it reduces that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just move into the next page then, looking at our total expenditure, which is forecast to be 4.8 million under budget at year end. This is predominantly due to our Datascape project and our waters organisations. A majority of the changes in these projects is timing. Our Datascape project will be going live in 4 weeks' time. And we will have some carry forwards of about 1.4 million into the new financial year. So that's a 2-year project where that budget is phased over. Similarly with the water organisation set up, the expenses year to date are 2.7 under budget. And again, that's timing with TCC being the administrator for these costs. We are waiting on some of those invoices through this early establishment phase to come through, but also anticipating that we'll be underspent by 1.4 million at the end of the financial year and carry that and look to carry that forward as well. Our maintenance and operations budget is 1.9 million underneath. There've been no significant issues that have required expenditure in the wastewater or water network compared to what we budgeted for. And that's expected to continue for the remainder of the year at this stage. Obviously, there's works happening relating to the January storm weather event, but a majority of those costs will be factored through to the annual plan 27 discussions. Just touching on borrowings. So our borrowings at the end of March were 235 million. Our average cost of funds on those borrowings is 4.10%. We're expecting to land the end of the year around 265 million of borrowings compared to the budgeted 278. And that decrease there is primarily an impact of the lesser capital program, as well as the cash surplus that we'll see coming through the P&L.
Councillor Murray-Bench.
Madam Chair, could I just ask, on page 93, we've got corporate services revenue is down, but corporate services expenses are significantly up. Can you explain that for me, please?
So as touched on before, the corporate services revenue includes the general rates. So our revenue is higher because of the penalties that have come through, as well as the growth that we've received on the general rates. And our expenses are significantly under budget, and that's the Datascape project and also the waters project, which goes through that corporate services activity. I'll just jump across to the balance sheet. So you'll see on the balance sheet this month that our cash equivalents, our receivables and our payables are all higher than budgeted and higher than the previous month. So we've had our rate strike in that month of March. So we've received a significant amount of cash, as well as our receivables increasing for those that we are yet to receive. But also on the payable side, we record income in advance for those months where we're not recognising the revenue at that point, and that those rates sit on the balance sheet and are released each month for the remainder of the year.
Councillor Daly.
Oh, Jonathan, sorry, I just want to go back slightly. In terms of the rating penalties, is it fair to say that, I mean, they're treated as revenue, is it, how do they balance out when we remit penalties or write them off when they're considered uncollectible? Do you say there's a good balance between imposing penalties and having to write off penalties or rates remissions?
So some of those penalties we do collect, or we will write the penalties back if a ratepayer goes on to a payment plan, for instance. We'll consider that they're recent penalties or they've had circumstances where a payment plan works for them. As long as they continue with that payment plan, then those penalties wouldn't be reapplied. But your assumption is correct that a lot of those would eventually or could eventually be written off as those debts become uncollectible.
That's actually quite a good incentive to have these penalties, which set at about 3%, aren't they?
So the 3% you're talking about is the discount we offer for when ratepayers pay early, but the penalties are at various times. So if you haven't paid by the 1st of July of the next rating year, it becomes 10%. And then again, there's a further 10% 6 months later on the 1st of January, they get run again.
Okay, and is that legislatively set, the 10%?
That's set by council.
So Jonathan, just on the rates, not unpaid, do we not, or how often do we register a charge against a property for that?
Yeah, so it's a process that we can be sharper on. We do make sure that when there's a mortgage against the rates, we're recorded in our system. And we've just had the latest information from Lynn's updated to the system. So that's been a bit of a process for us to get those updates from them this year. So we've now got that information in our system and we'll be able to go through that process.
Is it common for us to, I mean, not everyone has a mortgage, obviously. I understand how the mortgage side works, but yeah, so, but it's not, yeah, is it something that we commonly do or not at all?
Our first point of call is obviously to work with the ratepayer on the payment plan. It hasn't been overly common for us to put a charge on in recent times.
So councillors, maybe if I can just give a bit more detail on that. In terms of how we recover rates and penalties, there's a very prescriptive process that we follow. The penalties are an outcome of non-payment. So the first course of action is one, we follow up, ask them why they've missed their payment. Do they need some help going on a payment plan? The team are really proactive on that. The next stage is identifying if they got a mortgage, then you go to the bank, they pay it. Normally what we're finding is if people are really seriously in arrears on their rates, there's other systemic issues that they're facing from a financial perspective. So the team again tries to work with them to get that in hand. It's not unusual if the banks foreclose on the properties, then that's part of the settlement proceeds. The rates are always made up to date. There are rates that we are unable to collect, that we are unable to register a mortgage on, register a charge on, and that's mostly around multiple and Maryland. And that's where the vast majority of our rates write-offs come from, the statute barred rates. Probably coming to Rodney's point as well, it covers off, it's not, whilst it's revenue, it's not really cash. Very rarely do we receive the $1 million of penalties, and as our rates go up each year, that your penalties will go up. All you're doing is kicking the can down the road for 8 years, and then we write it off at a future date.
Yeah, I'll just finalise by touching on the Treasury report at the end. So on the 1st of April and 4th of April, 8th of April, just past this report, we took out 2 further additional swap covers. So we've been working with Bancorp and had some orders in place to try and get some good rates. So on the 1st of April, we put in some hedging at 3.96%, and on the 8th of April at 4.22%. So Bancorp have been in regular contact with us. We think with that 3.96, not that you can pick the bottom of the market, but we did reasonably well with locking that rate in when we did. And their indication at the moment is that it's on an upward trend. They consider that if and when the oil sorts itself out, we might level out, but unlikely to go back, as the oil will probably keep inflation at a higher level than previously anticipated by the Reserve Bank.
Right, are there any more questions? Councillor Daly.
Jonathan, there's been some inflation results coming through from other countries which sort of are indicating that the inflation forecasts have been lower than expected. Have you got a comment on that in terms of New Zealand's situation or anything that we know of?
Yeah, the feedback we've had from our readings and from Bancorp as well is that our inflation is likely to be driven by fuel. We're a wee bit further away from some of those bigger markets, so there's a bigger fuel impact for us. So the Reserve Bank, even though they left the OCR at 2.25%, they are closely watching where that inflation might take us to before they make any decisions.
Do you know what the drivers are for these international lower than expected inflation rates? Obviously, fuel is the one that's the major one at the moment, but what are the other factors that have sort of contributed to this?
It's obviously going to depend on each country and each market. If fuel's a cost, their inflation may be lower because consumers are staying home more and not spending. Yeah, but no, I'd have to look at specific examples of markets, but we can do a wider research. And on that front as well, we're going to invite Bancorp to come along to the next staff meeting on the 28th of July and get them to do a full update.
Joyce.
That last comment might have actually been preempted what I was about to say. But on page 31 of the report, 106 of the agenda, funding risk. So we're looking at quite a lot of exposure in the next 3 years. I'm not sure how that matches up over time. Is that around the 50% mark? Is that normal for our 0 to 3 years? Because obviously we are looking at a turn in the market. We have looked at a turn in the market, and it seems that longer term debt is zero. And I'm just wondering whether there's any plan to deal with that before the rates got too much further, either through options or whatever.
Yep. So we have talked recently to Bancorp about the potential of doing collars. So we're locking some of those gains sitting there now. Our first target has been to get above those policy minimums. And then we will look to keep that story alive with Bancorp and see what those opportunities potentially are.
I'm sure at the next meeting they'll give us a bit of an update on where they think things are going.
Yeah. So I think Matt might have.
I think this also comes through to council's risk appetite as well. So quite an appropriate question. At the moment, we will only fund out to what we think we need, and where the risk of the interest rate markets is around having certainty of what those interest rates are. I am aware of previous councils and other councils that have a slightly different risk appetite, and they will go and borrow significantly ahead of what they expect on the basis that they can get a lower interest rate and then put it on an investment or put it on arbitrage and earn interest on the cash. That's a trade-off that council needs to consider around optics, and actually do you actually need the funding, especially post-Waters when it's unlikely we're going to have a significant amount of debt.
Yeah, I mean, that's the counterfactual to that, as I'm sure you're aware, is there are a number of British corporate entities that have gone bust because they played the market for Forex rather than focusing on their day jobs. Retailers and others that got all excited by Forex and interest rate trading, and then went belly up because of it. So I guess that is a good question around the appetite for risk.
Yep, I'd say fundamentally different approaches. We certainly wouldn't even entertain foreign exchange trading or options trading. This is more around, do we go and borrow a tranche now, knowing that it's at the bottom of the market, and also knowing, given our credit rating, we're going to get a better return on the other side. So fairly risk-free. But again, it's optics and what your appetite is for risk.
And you also raise the water company. So I guess a lot of this, almost all of our debt will pass to them. So taking decisions for them is probably not a good idea either.
Adele. Through the chair. So yes, as you pointed out, Councillor Joyce, about 85% of our debt will be transferred to the water organisation, and we will be working with them over the next sort of 6 months to establish that transfer or innovation of our existing arrangements. The expectation is that the water companies will be borrowing over a longer period of time, and looking at, So there is, when some of that leveraging was in discussions with the government, was to push out some of that length of loans and to create the intergenerational balance as well. So you will see some of that change as it shifts into the water organisation moving forward. But to Matt's point, we're very conservative when it comes to ratepayer money, and so we're going to make sure that we've got the right information and the right advice, particularly with Bank Corp. And as Jonathan said, they will be coming to our next audit risk and finance meeting, and it'll probably be a good time for an update from them in conjunction with some of our projections for the long-term plan.
Is Bangkok also the advisor for Tauranga City?
Yes, they are. So
that'll make it a bit smoother because we're looking at both halves.
yes, it is. Yeah.
Jonathan, just you mentioned collars, and I just think it might be worthwhile just explaining that a little bit better for those without a treasury background.
Yeah, sure thing. So a collar is going to allow us to lock in a range of rates, if you like. So it sounds a lot easier in my head, but it's as it sounds. It is putting a top and a bottom on it. So we'll go out to one of our commercial banking partners and we'll say, well, if it's between 4.2 and 4.3, we can either do it as a locked-in collar, or they can do it as a notifiable. So then they would contact us, so that decision's still with us. So what we've done recently with these two new ones is not a collar scenario, but we've put in a watch order. So then on a Thursday morning, we'll have all 4 banks to make sure we're getting the best price possible, ringing us in the morning to say, well, we can now do 4.17. And then we just do a quick call around. And if we're happy with that level, we'll go with the best option of those at the time.
Like the inverse of buying shares when you have a range of prices that you're prepared to pay, basically. Councillor Alvin?
Probably an incredibly stupid question, but finance costs, that's just interest, not the capital repayments in there.
It is interest.
So where do I find the capital repayments? Because what interests me is we start to have this conversation about borrowing. And I take what Matt says on board, there's a reasonable level to which you can borrow as a percentage of your rates, and that should be including your repayments. And I'm just trying to get a picture of what the combination of both are, because to me, those figures are sort of kind of unhelpful, because I've got the interest cost there. Where do I find the loan repayment cost? Or is it just buried somewhere else?
Yeah.
So I want a picture. What I want to do is say, what is the picture of the cost of our debt to this organisation, both in interest and in capital? So it might be possible to make a reasonable assessment as what a prudent level of borrowing might be. So if you've got your loan, you've got your interest, because really from a tax point of view, it's irrelevant for us. It's just one cost. So what is the combined amount of the cost of debt servicing for this organisation as a percentage of our income versus what is a appropriate level of percentage of income for debt? That's what I'm trying to get a picture of.
So I'll jump in on that one. Sorry, Jonathan. Yeah. I think maybe what we can do for the next ARF meeting, Graham, and I think it's actually a good idea. We can actually bring back what the debt bucket looks like in a graph rather than showing you an amorphous green blob. So you can actually see we've got $10 million maturing next year. So that's a cash flow impact. Are we going to repay it or reborrow? Because often what happens is we'll repay and reborrow contemporaneously. So there's no cash flow.
So we tend to borrow on an interest-only basis and then with balloon payments and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Which makes it bloody difficult, doesn't it? But anyway.
But we can bring that back so you can actually see if there are any anomalous troughs and peaks.
I'll just make a follow-on comment from that. When we're talking to the belts and braces side of things, Graham, it's around what is our debt compared to our revenue, and then it looks at interest costs as well. So when we're looking at the balance of, the projects that we've got coming through and the funding that we've got allowed, we know what that cap is over a longer period of time. So this council has had a debt to revenue provision of 200%. So for the revenue that you get in a year, you're borrowing no more than 200% of that revenue. So you've got your belts and braces. The local government funding agency sets a parameter of 280%. But what's now required, sort of moving forward, is that hasn't provided for the infrastructure requirements, which is why the government sort of turned to the water organisations, which then moved to a free funds operating, which is a slightly different metric. But the controls are in terms of our debt to revenue ratios is probably the primary one.
Yeah, I think it's important that the issue is that when it's sort of, we've got 10 million to pay next year, and it comes in a bubble, it's getting that understanding the long-term impact as opposed to the smoothing of it out, which, you know, most households work on principal and interest because it's easier. And it's certainly much easier to follow. So, but from a budgeting perspective, and then from a planning perspective as an elected member, with all due respect, it's really hard to get a picture because we want to spend, say, oh no, you've got to remember we've got 10 million to pay back next year. And that's unhelpful in a decision-making process. And that's all I want to get a handle on.
It's almost a shame that we don't have offset. We don't use offset very much in New Zealand like they do in Australia. But we are going to talk about cash advance from LGFA next. But I'm quite keen on having a cup of tea. So have we got any more questions? Oh, we have a mover. Okay, so recommendation that the CFO's report dated 26th of May 2026 monthly financial report be received. We have a mover, Councillor Joyce. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Alvin. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, so we'll have a cup of tea and we'll be back here. I'm going to give you 20 minutes. So you're going to come back at 15:15. I like it to be nice and tight. get going. Jonathan, if you want to carry on now with the LGFA cash advance facility, please.
Yeah, so recently the LGFA have introduced a new cash advance facility. At the moment, council uses their short-term funding facility. And normally when we're borrowing in that space, we're borrowing for 30 days to a year, basically. We'll be locking in those loans for. Our current approach on that is, with the LGFA's approach, is a BKBM rate plus about a 20-point margin. The new facility that LGFA have recently brought out is a cash advance facility, which is basically just an overdraft. So we will be able to contact the LGFA on the day to repay funds, or to contact them on the day to draw down funds for short-term needs. So we'd be able to have less cash in the bank by repaying and using this facility. The rates, the base interest rate for this facility is based on the OCR plus a 50 basis points. So we're more close to the current market for those, for our interest costs, rather than locking in for our longer term, which we currently do.
Actually, I've just got a question before I go to the Mayor. So in terms of setting the limit on the facility, what's involved with that, please?
So we would need to apply to the LGFA and recommend a limit to the LGFA that council would want.
And what would we be thinking?
At this stage, we haven't factored in applying. We think it is a good tool we can use, particularly as we move towards waters where we will have a lower amount of debt. And this tool could be quite good in managing that day in, day out, particularly for our 20th of the month operationally, where we have a big drawdown, but often we can pay it back quickly if we've got that cash coming in. So
yeah, although there's minimum repayment amounts.
Yeah, so we would work through our operating cash flows and decide or recommend what that limit might look like and how we could use it in day-to-day operation.
Okay, Mayor Denia?
This one's going to be a tricky question, but if this had been introduced, beginning of last year, rough order of magnitude, how much money would we have saved or made?
So potentially not a great deal. Where we would get benefits from would be by not holding cash in bank and being able to repay that down. We would still be looking to do our similar hedging profile and locking in for the longer term, given our high level of debt. So the savings we would potentially see would be by not having the 10 to 20 million cash in the bank.
But the benefit of not having cash in the bank is that it's not a really low rate of interest.
Yeah,
so I get a bit distracted.
Yeah.
Not having a really low rate of interest, and that, but you need less.
So
less debt.
if we were to reduce our cash on hand by 10 million, there'd be a benefit of about 400,000 a year savings and interest.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Joyce.
So we have some short-term facilities with commercial banks, right?
We've got standby facilities with commercial banks as well as LGFA.
Yeah. So do we, will this replace some of our commercial banking arrangements if we use it?
It could do. We keep the commercial bank there for multiple reasons. We've got them there as emergency funds that we can tap into as well. Particularly, it's also good to keep those relationships with the commercial banks, because we are doing those swap hedges and that through the commercial banks and not through LGFA.
Right. Okay. So do we often use sort of overnight cash facilities, borrowing from commercial banks, or we never do it?
No, we never do it. We all our borrowings through LGFA.
Right. So we don't actually have a big need for this. It will be cheaper though to do this than through a commercial bank, would it?
Yeah, this cash advance facility would be cheaper than using a commercial bank's cash advance equivalent.
Right.
But obviously our whole picture changes when a lot of our debt goes to waters next year as well. But it will give us potentially give us the flexibility that we'd need through that time. So without waters, we may not need to have as big a loans. So this smaller cash facility might be more relevant and applicable in that time.
Cool. Thank you.
Ron?
This one, I want to understand the commitment costs for the commercial banks. There we were presumably paying something for that, and that they're also getting the benefit of us using their other products. What is the relevant cost? What's the ballpark cost of that? And would we save much by negotiating those away if we can, especially if we could use this facility?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've recently renegotiated with ANZ, and what we try and do is benchmark against the LGFA. So I don't have it in dollar terms, but there was about a 15 or 20 point difference between what we can get through the LGFA compared to those commercial banks. We would definitely look to reduce the limits with the commercial banks if we were to go down this path with this facility, but it does leave, I guess, all our eggs in one basket at that point, which we want to try and spread that risk away, but still have some relationships with those commercial banks.
Are they coming to the party?
Yeah, they were pretty good in the discussions. It was a pretty open discussion, and they provided us some options 1, 3 and 5 years with better rates, obviously, the further out that we would lock in with them for. And they are pretty competitive amongst themselves for the hedging as well. Once they know that someone's got 2 or 3 points better, they'll come back and try and get that business. Yeah.
Jonathan, I think Ron actually touched on this. Is there a non-utilisation charge for the facilities?
There is a commitment fee of 20 basis points paid quarterly. So that would depend on what limit we were seeking. And that's when we'd have to work out what our value for money ratio would be to make sure we haven't got too much excess limit sitting there that we're paying for and not going to use.
Do you want to say something?
So something that the team could do, this is a fairly new thing that's come through, is have a look at the benefit of this particular policy. Is it's literally, Jonathan can pick up the phone today, draw down 10 million, and then he can pay it back at lunchtime tomorrow, rather than having to borrow for 30 days. And that's probably one of the benefits of this. We could then look at how that works in terms of what the commitment fee would be of 20 or 30,000 a year.
And to Matt's point, that would be super useful during our setting our rate strike when we're getting all that cash installments in. And sometimes it's difficult to align when we can repay that short-term debt. But if we've got some sitting there on an overdraft facility, we could repay that immediately.
It's just like my credit card, really. So, Graham.
So, it's a long story, but we must have a regular calculatable balance sitting in our current account all the time. So we, like what I say, the bank will be able to measure on an average what's sitting in our current account on an average basis, and of course they make a lot of money out of that. So does this facility here enable us to remove the need for having surplus in our account? And by the time you do the benefit, and yeah, so that's the purpose, because the banks do rip you off on that basis when they know that you've got an average balance over the year of $10 million, then they use that. We don't get any benefit from it.
Yeah, correct. So we would probably have 10 to 15 million in the bank tied money. Not all the time. It definitely goes down, and we've got a 5 to 7 day window where we work with LGFA to do that next drawdown, or planning ahead from when we know the rates are coming in. This facility would allow us to be tighter in that space, but also at the moment, if we know we've had a rates installment and say we've got 20 or 30 million, what we will do is we'll take those funds and put them on term deposit with one of the commercial banks just to make the most of that as well. So that would minimise the advantages we get from the new cash advance facility. But if we are using that day in, day out, which we can do, and that's the approach. The reason why LGFA set it up is that it's same day repayment, same day call.
And just a further comment from me, so through the chair, we've got our constraints that are built in through the Treasury policy, Graham. So, I mean, it's about how much money we can hold in any one bank and where our risk lies and things like that. So this would just need to be brought through into that policy setting as well.
Councillor Murray-Benj.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This is a philosophical question. You may not want to answer it, but we've got a history in New Zealand of banks going bung. While we've got competition within our banking system, I think we get a reasonable deal. What is to stop this local government funding agency from going bung?
I'm happy to take that one on. This has been covered off quite recently, and actually Andrew Mickle here was and actually presented to you all around how financially sustainable the LGFA is. But what will stop it going bankrupt is two things. One, it has an enormous amount of liquidity. And I think I showed that even if Auckland defaulted on all of its debt, the LGFA still has enough money to repay its external creditors. Ultimately, it comes down to, as councils, if they were to call on the guarantee, councils have, a legislative capacity to go out and rate for that. So if the LGFA was to go bung, I suspect New Zealand's going bung to be.
Question is, our neighbours had a watch kept on them for their performance from the local funding agency at the last meeting. So I'm just curious because it really is performing like a commercial bank.
Adele?
So the watch, Margaret, is in conjunction with the Standard & Poor's rating. So the Standard & Poor's rating assesses, your overall debt and a whole lot of other sort of quantitative measures. And then that then is a factor when borrowing through LGFA, depending on your Standard & Poor's rating and what rate you can get. In relation to LGFA, that's why the belts and braces sort of start with, they will let you borrow up to a maximum of 280% debt to revenue. So if you're getting too far beyond that, it's a bit like your mortgage and you can't afford to pay it back. They're making sure that it's within a reasonable dollar compared to the revenue that you get in each year. So, and then what also sits behind it is that there is joint and several guarantees for each of the council to support the whole country. So for that, it's highly unlikely that this particular entity would go into some financial challenges without some early flags because of known projections or known spend profiles or seeking an exemption. So there was an exemption provided to TCC from 280% to 350%. But they have to report monthly, they can't borrow to that cap, and there's all these constraints around it, and it's reported to the board and to their council. So they've got a lot more intensive reporting requirements for that.
So I'm just conscious of the time. We need to finish by 12:30 today. So if we have any other questions, Councillor Daly.
Sorry, it's on the same page, but it's not the same issue. But in terms of and this has come up through social media commentary. Every time the rates invoices are just go out in the mail, there's always a commentary about frequency of rates instalments, and Western Bay is a bit of an outlier with 2 instalments per annum versus typical councils having 4 instalments per annum. So I'm just wondering, is there a reason we do that? I know it makes it easier for staff and administration perhaps, but doing a bit of a research, I find that and it goes back to my earlier comment about rates penalties, more frequent rates instalments actually reduce the number of rates penalties that people are having because, for example, if they've got 2 instalments of $3,000 versus 4 instalments of $1,500, then it's more manageable for ratepayers and less likely to get into trouble. Is that something we could consider? Because it is a point of serious discussion on social media, like I say.
Councillor Daly, you can pay monthly, you can pay weekly, you can pay fortnightly. It's up to you.
So I realise that, but I don't know. People just seem to be governed by when the bill turns up in the mail. I mean, personally, I pay every 2 weeks, but yeah.
Yeah,
we do, just to, I guess, briefly answer the question, we do have a lot of ratepayers who choose to do either fortnightly, monthly, weekly. So there are a lot in that space. We do get a lump in, obviously, to meet that 3% discount when that's struck in September, October timings. And then again, another lump in March. But excuse me, the timing and the number of instalments is the way Western Bay has done it traditionally. but it can be changed through an annual plan or long-term plan process.
Okay, so we're going to move on now.
Seems like it could be a good
We're moving on, councillor Daly. Okay. Yes, you're going to remove it. Okay, so the recommendation is that the financial analyst report dated 26th of May 26 titled Local Government Funding Agency Cash Advance Facility be received. We have a mover. Thank you, councillor Murray-Benj. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Joyce. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right, Simon. Simon, yes. You're on a time limit as well.
Morning, Madam Chair, councillors, independent member, Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Right, so we've got the internal audit framework and work plan before the committee this morning. The paper should be, I hope, reasonably self-explanatory. In terms of devising the work program for the next 3 years, we went through the process described on page 111, 112 of the agenda. In addition to that, setting the plan or at least identifying potential topics, of which there are about 39 over the next 3 years. We had individual meetings with members of the ELT last month to prioritise and to briefly set general parameters as regards scoping of the various items of the work program. As you will see on the pages following, we're proposing to conduct roughly half of the topics that we've identified to make sure that we keep within our annual budget over the next 3 years. Having said that, the program is intentionally flexible. It will be reviewed from time to time so that if we need to raise priorities or reprioritise, then we have certainly the ability to do that. One other feature in the description of the work program is that if any topics emerge that necessitate an internal audit scrutiny, then we can certainly build that into the program during the course of this the 3 years. As I mentioned in previous meetings, we've got an arrangement with our internal audit partners from Regional Council assisting us. With each and every item on the program, we'll be issuing them with a work brief as part of that, defining the specific scope of each part of the work program. There are 2 items that we currently have work briefs with our internal audit resource. One is item 8 on page 116 of the agenda, looking at our treasury function that will be conducted next month. And the other item, which is not mentioned in the agenda papers, but the Chair mentioned that during the committee's, during the council workshop last week, is that we do have a risk review about to be, or actually currently underway in respect of Rangiora Business Park that we would hope to complete within the next month or so. With that, I'm happy to take any comments, questions or suggestions.
Ron?
My only question is, so great list of things, a huge list of things to do. Have we mapped that at all to the work of this committee so that members have an idea what will be coming up over the course of the year? Is that possible to do, or are you still sort of working out your own timelines?
Well, on the agenda, we've identified which items on the work program that we are proposing to do each and every year, year beginning 1 July. But as I say, that's intentionally flexible. A review will only be commenced once we have issued our internal audit resource partners with a work brief. I don't know whether that answers your question or not.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking, so this committee will be, I know it'll be busy in a meeting or 2 with the external audit, for instance, There'll be some work on policies, say that the Treasury policy might be more urgent than something else, and just to make sure that the workflow is makes sense for the committee over and above your particular area, just in terms of workload.
Through the chair, I can respond to that one. So what we've done in the past is had a work program of what we're going to bring to each of the, for the year, what we're going to each meeting. And so I think that's what you're asking for, Ron, and so we can look to provide that. So, when we're expecting, certain of these audits to be completed and what agenda that will come through on. And like I say, in any policy settings, given that we talked about Treasury today and including the new cash option. So there's a program of work also associated with the long-term plans, which we will be aware. So there will be, we have to look at what committee it goes to, but we can work with you on what things that you might wish to see through this committee as well.
So Simon, in terms of prior internal audit work plans, how does this one compare in terms of content and volume?
Well, two things. I believe the nature of the work program is quite comparable to what we've seen before. The most recent previous work program was presented to this committee at the beginning of last year, from what I can see. All of those topics you will find in this work program, whether we've necessarily given them a higher priority or a low priority, but at least either way that they're here for the committee to keep them in view. Also, when you look at appendices D, E, and F by way of internal audit charter framework and the protocols that we have in place by way of reporting, firstly through the ELT for information and initial comment, and then directly to this committee, which the internal audit is mandated to do, you will find that is quite comparable to how we have approached it previously. Those, particularly appendices D, E, and F, have been updated because the global internal audit standards were revised early last year, just for matters of greater engagement between internal audit and in our case, our elected members.
Do we have any other questions? Councillor Dinsdale.
Morning, Simon. Can you just help me to understand on page 120, and it's the scope of year 3? So I'm just a little concerned why 36 and 37 are not actually been undertaken earlier than 28 and 29.
Yes, I can certainly take on board that feedback. Like I say, the program is flexible in terms of what we've included and what we've not included. What we've included and not included is primarily because of our budgetary constraints. I want to make sure that we're working within our budget. We're getting the most output possible within the financial constraints that we have for the internal audit resource. In terms of whether we perform certain elements of the work program sooner rather than later, we're going to be reviewing that. Currently, it is proposed for year 3, but whether we bring that forward or not, we can discuss that with the executive leadership team, and I'm certainly willing and happy to take on board the comment that if it fits within, if you like, the ELT's agenda and program and so forth, that we can certainly bring that forward if we have a recommendation along those lines.
And through the chair, so I mean, one of the biggest constraints is around the budget, Darlene. And so we've tried to give you visibility of what the full audit program is looking like. So we end up effectively going on a cyclical type basis. If council thinks that we've got some risk in some certain areas, and we've identified it in 3 years' time, there's certainly the ability of this committee to bring forward and request for for earlier earlier issuance of some of the, the audits that we would normally do. So this is for your visibility and effectively endorsement based on our recommendation, but making sure that we've got a program of work, you've got the full visibility of what we'd expect to do and good practice. So, but yeah, if there's any concerns, this is obviously the time to raise it, and we can look to change some of the timing of the program.
Councillor Sol.
Yeah, my question basically is on page 118 as well. It's about the post implementation of the ERP system. And I don't have a real issue about non-internal audit resources such as, people checking, but I would have thought most of that would be part of the requirement of the delivery of the service in the first place, and staff being comfy. Is there I guess it's peanuts overall in the budgets of things, but I just question it.
Through the chair, what you will find on page 118 is you're referring to item 15. We've put that in black type rather than orange type, simply because we're not proposing to have that done as part of the internal audit program or by the internal audit so much as, like you say, it should be part and parcel of the implementation and then the software provider performing that. But we're keeping an internal audit visibility on it so that as and when they come up with a report, we can have a quick look at it to see whether it may warrant a further look at in the following year. That's why you've got it currently in year 2, probably the latter part, I might say, but like I say, it's something that we're just keeping a visibility on, although it's not going to be certainly not coming out of the internal audit budget, I can say.
So I just want to follow through with that one, Councillor Sol. So as you can imagine, setting up a new system is pretty critical to business continuity. So the user testing is where we obviously test for every script of what we would normally expect to see. And we've had user testing 1, 2, and now we're onto our 3rd round, if you like, to make sure that the system will do as we expect it to do, right? So, and as mentioned, we're kind of going through that later stages and ready to go live for 1 July. But this is, again, belts and braces, just to make sure that everything we're expecting to do is being done.
Right, if there are no further questions, Councillor Daly.
Simon, in terms of the where the council remains affordable, resilient and value focused under economic and climate pressure, on page 114, I was just wondering how I'm not 100% sure when it says none. Does that mean there won't be any work done on this? Or why 2027, 28? This year tests whether controls and investments made earlier are working and whether council remains affordable. So I just want a clarification. Are we doing some work on this, and what would the nature be? Would it be a comparative measure or a whole of budget sort of comparison of ratepayers' personal circumstances? How do you determine that?
What you see on pages 113 to 115 is more of a high-level summary of the work program proposed for those 3 years, and categorising them in terms of whether they refer to our digital and technology activities, economic and financial environment, all the categories that you see there. So in terms of what you've mentioned, we are proposing that the program over the course of the 3 years will be addressing each and every aspect at certain stages. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. But the specific elements of the work program commence from pages 116 onwards, but as I said, from pages 113 to 115 is more of a high level sort of categorized summary of what you see in the detailed work program.
Yeah, no, I did look for more detail, but couldn't find it. But just wondering if the focus is on, council, maybe contract delivery, value for money, or is it on value for money for the end user or the ratepayer?
We do have, if we're looking at contract management, there is an item, I think, in year one on procurement, and I believe there are a couple of other items that do touch on contract management as well. And we will also have our project management software coming online at some stage over the next few months or so, I presume. So there'll be elements of that involved as well.
Okay, thanks.
Right. If there's no more questions, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Oh, sorry, Councillor Dinsdale. Oh, sorry, you were moving. Yes. Seconder. The Mayor seconded. Right. Lovely. Thank you. Yes, if you wish.
Just want to say thank you for the quality of information that our finance section is bringing to this table. I think for those of us that are not financially literate to the extent that we could be, I think we're very lucky to have the quality of staff that we have, Madam Chair, and I thank you and your team.
There we go. Right. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So now risk pool. Sounds like fun, doesn't it?
So this information, excuse me, is for receipt. So we've received an update from Risk Pool. So Risk Pool is a council co-participation, if you like, self-insurance. It's something we've been in for a long time. Risk Pool themselves are looking to slowly wind themselves up. They've been in this mode since 2017. So these are the last few claims that we're expecting to come through are working their way through now. There are currently two domestic claims in the operations, and in August last year, Western Bay Council contributed just under $9,000 to that pool to help fund the ongoing representation and litigation of those claims. So this information at the moment is just an update from Risk Pool themselves. They've also got a meeting coming up on the 19th of June, but at this stage, they're not seeking any further funds from Western Bay.
Jonathan, I have a couple of questions. One, did we ever actually make a claim against this pool? And because it's just basically what it is, isn't it? It's just a self-insurance kind of mechanism with a bit more of a diversification in terms of the risk. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And mainly for leaky homes, was it?
Some of the claims have been in that space, yes.
Okay, and the number of councils that are involved or were involved in it? So two questions.
I don't have that to hand, but from memory, there's about 16 or 17 that are in that pool.
Okay, so it's a very small pool then too. Yeah, was it always that small, was it?
Yes.
Okay, that's risky in itself, isn't it? And claims, did we ever make any claims?
I'm not sure of that information. I don't think we have, but I can certainly look deeper to clarify that situation.
Oh, yeah, that would be fine. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Everybody looks scared now. Thank you. We can move on to the next item. That was just information for receipt.
Right, so item 12.2 is a risk update for committee's information and discussion. Aon, our insurance broker and risk management support, have just commenced issuing monthly emerging risk updates, if you like, and that's included, well, the latest one is included for the committee's information from pages 136 onwards on the agenda. The covering note that I've got on page 134 replicates to some extent the I don't know whether it appeared as blurry on your agenda material as it did on mine, so apologies for that. But essentially, Aon are circulating that. I'm using it, following from their suggestion as a catalyst for our discussion, regular discussions on all matters related to risk. And as soon as we get our enterprise risk module that was referred to earlier in this meeting up and running within the next few weeks, we will integrate that within our regular reporting in terms of describing the risks that we've identified, and more importantly, which, if you were to be hypercritical, we're not currently doing as well as we should be, analysing those risks in terms of mitigating controls and the very specific tasks that we should be performing within various timeframes to effectively manage and report on those risks. So with that in mind, I'm happy to take any comments, questions or suggestions on the material.
That's for Joyce.
Just on page 14 of that report, page 149 of the agenda, I've raised the issue of people using AI tools, being ahead of formal policy. I know we've had some discussion about elected members using AI in the past, but have we identified a way of ensuring that AI use in the organisation is appropriate?
We do have, if we refer back to the previous item, we do have a review of the council's use of AI. Let me see if I can find it.
Is that in the 3
page 118 is item 17 on that page. So we do have it reflected in the internal audit program for a start, but certainly happy to take on board any other, as I say.
Year 2. The implication of the Aon report is that people are doing it before the policy's been formed. So that's the risk they're seeing.
Well, I mean, certainly if it becomes when we say year 2, whether it's at the beginning of year 2 or the end of year 2, it would still be in year 2. And certainly if we make great progress with our internal audit program, and as I mentioned, the on page 116, item 8, Treasury audit, we're using that as a lead off test run, if you like. If we do meet success in terms of timing and progress and keeping things within budget, we may have the ability to bring year 2 items forward, and certainly this is obviously one of those burning issues that we're all facing at the moment.
I wonder if, might be one for the CEO, but are we fully across how staff are using AI? Yeah, now, right? So a formal audit process will go a bit deeper, but in terms of, Dale's going to speak to that. Okay.
Through the chair. So yes, this is something that we're actively tracking through the IT department. We've got we've agreed an approach which includes a high-level policy about the use of AI and making sure that our staff check the information. We've got a controlled environment in which we get the information from. So we're using Copilot and have commercial licenses for that for our staff that would like to use or be involved with the AI. And we've got about 50 licenses for council staff, because not everyone needs to be operating in the AI environment. So, and we're also training staff. So we've had like a junior beginners AI class and a more technical being run actually this week. So we're quite active in that space and making sure that we've got the controls, but also looking for the future audits. Marion is working through the policy setting. There's a lot of things happening nationally at the moment, so we're just waiting to make sure that we've got that right. But certainly something that we've got a lot of eyes and ears over at the moment.
I presume we're onto this, but presumably we have a rule that confidential information can't be put into public AI engines.
That's correct, absolutely not. And that's why, for those that need it, we've got the internal Copilot option for use. And we've also got another, it's called Westy for us, but it's another AI solution, but it's for an internal environment only.
And the other one I was going to pick up on was page 152 of the agenda. I see it says, some councils have begun to introduce more proactive myth busting and explain the content on complex issues. I know we do a bit of that, and also acutely aware that if you get into that in a big way, it's very expensive to jump on everything. But just wondering whether that's being looked at all in the communication space, because we get a lot of myths. A lot of myths out there.
Yeah, we're in an evolution on this regard. So we're using it appropriately, and the comms team work through a myriad of data, excuse me, and trying to debunk the myths as well. So yeah, it's just about dealing with the volume of data in today's world and making sure it is true.
Last one I was going to pick up on was number 8, governance, complexity, reform, uncertainty, and role creep. It's already out of date, but that's not the report writer's fault. It's just changing every day.
Mayor Denyer?
Yeah, firstly, I was going to say that I think this report and the pithy comments in that are really useful, and some pretty look forward to future ones. I think that they're really good. I just want to comment on the AI issue. So you'll recall, I hope everyone recalls, we signed a policy on this. So it does lay out the rules and about putting confidential matter in and around crediting it appropriately. So I hope everyone remembers doing that and might want to reread it if there's any
Yes,
confusion.
it applies to both council and to staff, and it's the IT acceptable use policy.
Yep.
I suggest it's a good idea to resend that then, perhaps. Yeah. Councillor Daly.
Do you say it's appropriate to go to Councillor Adele now? No, Adele, you made the comment why we use internal co-pilot. Does that mean that internal co-pilot is ring fenced from outside interference or outside picking up of internal documents?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. But it does source information from the web. But it's not a two-way outlet, if you like.
We sure of that? I mean, is that explicit?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing was, I was going to ask a similar question to Rodney, but and I was actually going to do a request to Charlene for further information, but I won't bother now. But in terms of council workshops, council agendas, council presentations, are we going to go to the extent that there's some disclaimer or disclosure or crediting of AI within our documents going forward? Because currently we've got no idea if AI has been used to prepare presentations or agendas.
There is an expectation that there is a disclosure made if there's AI used, and that is a requirement at the moment. But what you'll find is most of the information people have to know and be aware of, and it's more supporting in pulling it together as opposed to being this is like a report per se.
I guess Nicola Willis made it pretty clear that this has been used at the highest level now, so it'd be nice to know where we stand. But and my final point is the Aon insurance people, they've been presented to us in the past, and I think they were quite helpful presentations, and they've also been to local government Zone 2 meetings and given presentations, and just wondering if that's likely to happen again for us.
Yes, I would imagine that before the end of this calendar year, we'll have Aon in here at least once to give us an overall presentation. Just on that subject, the material that they are supplying us each and every month, I must find personally quite impressive. Also, I got an invite last week, along with many of my counterparts in other councils, because I think Aon serve around about 67 odd councils around the country. They were holding a webinar this morning, so I did have a diary clash on that front. But if I can read from the invitation just briefly, that their webinar explores how councils can use risk appetite frameworks to support more deliberate, consistent and defensible decision making under uncertainty. It's a 45-minute webinar. So I believe that they will have a recording of that made available, and when they do so, then I'll be providing the committee with a link to that, because it is open space information. So that's just another example of the risk management support that they're providing to us.
I guess you could have got your group manager to answer the questions for you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch that.
That's all right.
Okay, Councillor Alvin.
Look, I just want to get back to the AI stuff. What I'm interested is, and I'm just going to personally get some training on its use, but it seems to me from a risk management perspective, that's an appropriate investment from the council's point of view to provide some training for elected members in the use of AI. Because if you're dreaming, if you think it's not going to be used, and I think it's something that's really important to make sure that we are properly upskilled in the use of it. So I'd just like to suggest that. I know sometimes this place is a bit squeaky in terms of making sort of proactive contributions, but I would personally value it. I don't mind. I'm going to do it anyway, whether you pay for it or not. But just listening around the table, it's probably useful.
Thank you, Councillor Alvin. We'll take that on board and we'll look to do something with you.
So if there are no more questions, we'll resolve to exclude the public and move into confidential. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ray, Councillor Joyce,